The skies over West Asia are getting faster and deadlier. American and Israeli attacks on Iran have been intensifying.
At 3:17 in the morning, deep beneath an unmarked compound on the Iranian coast, Iran's Fattah-1 Hypersonic weapon, the one American defense planners have quietly dreaded for 3 years, began its countdown. The next 5 minutes would test the most expensive naval shield ever assembled. The facility appears on no commercial map. 40 meters of compacted earth and reinforced concrete sit above a hardened launch bay carved into bedrock. The men stationed inside have maintained radio silence for 18 days. A coded transmission -0, 2 seconds long, routed through civilian relay nodes. Arrives at 3:17 a.m., no one speaks when it comes in. One operator moves to a hardened terminal and enters an authentication code. What follows is a checklist. Step 4 is the point of no return. They reach it in under 90 seconds. The weapon waiting beneath them is 8.7 meters long, mounted on a solid fuel booster, capped with a hypersonic glide vehicle, the Iranian aerospace. Force calls the Fattah-1. Iran revealed its existence in 2023. What it did not reveal was 31 months of classified upgrades that followed. The Fattah-1 ballistic missiles arc upward and fall back down in a predictable gravity-driven curve, like a stone launched from a catapult. This weapon does not arc, it skips. Once free of its booster, it rides an aerodynamic cushion along the upper atmospheric boundary, shedding altitude in precisely managed increments while sustaining velocities between Mach 13 and Mach 15. Every existing defense system on Earth was optimized against objects that obey gravity's arc. This weapon does not obey gravity's arc. It is the most consequential offensive platform Iran has ever aimed at an active naval target in open water. 52 miles southwest, the USS Carl Vinson transits the western lane of the Strait of Hormuz at 9 knots. The Vinson displaces 102,000 tons, operates 44 aircraft, and carries 5,100 sailors during what was logged as a routine passage. The air wing is valued at nearly $12 billion. She is not sailing alone. To her northeast, the USS Bunker Hill, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, holds escort at 5 nautical miles. To the south, the destroyer USS Sterett maintains an independent patrol 28 miles out. These 3 vessels form an overlapping net covering 1,400 square miles of open water. Defensive nets have geometry, and geometry has seams. The Iranians spent 31 months mapping every seam in this one. And here is what makes this engagement so alarming. The Fattah-1 was not even the opening shot tonight. Stay with this, because the next 60 seconds will change how you think about naval warfare. If you want the complete picture of what unfolds in the next 7 minutes, hit like right now so the Winds of Thought community sees this. The Vinsons. Strike Group does not yet know the Fattah-1 is not tonight's opening shot. At 3:11 a.m., 6 minutes before the Fattah-1 passes Step 4, to Zolfaghar ballistic missiles, lift away from separate mobile launchers 38 miles north-northeast of the strait. Near a coastal highway outside a small town, the Zolfaghar is a domestically produced precision surface missile. Range exceeds 700 kilometers. Circular error probable is under 30 meters. Each costs roughly $1.4 million. Neither is aimed at the Vinson. Both are aimed 14 degrees east of the carrier, directly at the outer edge of the defensive screen where the Bunker Hill runs her SPY-1B radar in active search mode. Iran is not trying to sink the Bunker Hill, it is trying to occupy her. The Bunker Hill's Combat Information Center identifies both Zolfaghar launches 7 seconds after ignition. Both tracks draw high-priority designations. 2. SM-2 Block 4. Interceptors leave the cruiser's forward cells at 3 hours, 11 minutes, and 44 seconds. Each SM-2 costs $1.9 million. Both intercepts are clean. Both Zolfaghars detonate above the eastern approach, 31 and 34 miles out, respectively. The combat team logs 2 confirmed kills in under 4 minutes, notes the intercept geometry in the log, and rebuilds its firing cues. What they do not realize, they have deployed their attention precisely where Tehran needed it deployed. 2 inexpensive missiles just reorganized the decision-making of the most sophisticated shipboard combat team in the world. And the primary weapon hasn't even left its silo yet. Comment shield below if you believe layered naval defense is the most sophisticated protective system humanity has ever fielded at 3 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds. The Fattah-1 launches from the hardened bay beneath the compound north of Bandar Lengda. The first stage, solid fuel, burns 11 seconds, pushing the glide vehicle above 90,000 feet before the booster separates and tumbles toward the Gulf below. The glide vehicle is now free. It does not climb further. It levels at 130,000 feet and begins its extended glide at Mach 13.4 across the upper atmospheric boundary. At that velocity, it crosses 1 mile every 0.28 seconds. The Bunker Hill's SPY-1B acquires the launch signature at 3 hours, 17 minutes, and 19 seconds. The moment the track hits the combat network, it generates a classification crisis. The object peaked at 130,000 feet and flattened out. It is not descending on any ballistic profile the threat library recognizes. It is flying, sustained, lateral, hypersonic. That is, glide vehicle behavior. The fire control computer cannot generate a high-confidence intercept solution. It flags the track as unknown priority and routes it to the strike. Group commander in 4 seconds. The commander aboard the Vinson now has 6 minutes and 41 seconds before the Fattah-1's impact. Window opens above the carrier's flight deck. The challenge is not electronics, it is physics. The Fattah-1 occupies an atmospheric band that American interceptors were not built to address efficiently. The SM-3 Block 2A kills warheads above 100 kilometers in the exoatmosphere. Before they re-enter denser air and begin maneuvering, the Fattah-1 never exceeds 100 kilometers. It launches shallow peaks at 40 kilometers and rides the atmospheric boundary layer to its aim point. The SM-6 is most lethal lower. Inside a different engagement corridor entirely, Tehran's engineers studied every declassified U.S. Missile Defense Agency intercept geometry analysis published between 2019 and 2024. They mapped where the SM-3 loses efficiency at its low end and where the SM-6 loses efficiency at its high end. Then they engineered the Fattah-1's glide ceiling to sit inside that gap. Deliberately, precisely, the gap is real. Iran didn't find a weakness in American defenses. They engineered their weapon to live inside one. Type yes to see a full breakdown of every interceptor remaining in the Bunker Hills cells at 3 hours 18 minutes and 2 seconds. The Bunker Hills weapons officer runs an SM-3 Block 2A intercept solution. The fire control computer returns a kinematic feasibility rating of 31%. The SM-3 can reach the engagement window in time, but its probability of closing on a Mach 13 glide vehicle maneuvering inside a corridor it was never optimized to cover is worse than 1 in 3. The weapons officer fires 2 SM-3 Block 2A missiles at 3 hours 18 minutes and 14 seconds anyway. Each costs $28 million. 56 million exits the launcher in under 5 seconds. Both climb northeast toward an intercept solution. The fire control system is already revising as the Fattah-1 executes its first lateral correction, 7 degrees at Mach 13. Shifting the projected impact point 22 miles to the southwest, the fire control network updates the track in real time. The interceptors are already committed. The first SM-3 arrives at the glide vehicle's last computed position. The position is empty. The Fattah-1 has already moved on. The SM-3 self-destructs at 3 hours 19 minutes and 31 seconds. The second SM-3 gets a new track and attempts a pursuit intercept. At 3 hours, 19 minutes and 48 seconds, its kill vehicle achieves 64 meters of proximity before detonating. 64 meters is not a direct hit, but the blast propagates a pressure wave across the Fattah-1's forward aerodynamic boundary. One of 4 guidance fins on the port side absorbs fragment impacts. The Fattah-1 does not lose control. It does not slow down, but its attitude control system registers asymmetric stress and begins compensating, burning maneuvering propellant 30% above the baseline plan. The glide vehicle just burned roughly 1/5 of its terminal phase maneuvering budget 27 miles south of the Vinson. The destroyer USS Dewey has been running an independent patrol since 2 o'clock. Her SPY-6 radar, a more advanced variant than the Bunker Hill system, positioned at an entirely different angle relative to the incoming track, has been feeding data into the strike group network since 3 hours, 17 minutes, and 22 seconds. The Dewey cannot shoot. The geometry places the Vinson directly between the Dewey and the threat. The carrier herself is in the missile's flight path. But the Dewey is giving the Bunker Hill something more valuable than a firing solution. A second radar picture from a different azimuth, triangulating the Fattah-1's position far more precisely than either ship alone could achieve. Share this video so your network understands that carrier strike group defense is not a ship, it is a distributed sensing architecture. The glide vehicle descends through 80,000 feet at 3 hours 20 minutes and 17 seconds. Drag has pulled velocity down to Mach 11.8. The onboard guidance transitions to terminal attack programming. The nose pitches 4 degrees toward the water. At Mach 11.8, the time from 80,000 feet to sea level is 94 seconds. The Vinson's closing systems are in full autonomous engagement. 2 ram block, 2 launchers, and 3 Phalanx CIWS mounts track the Fattah-1's projected terminal path. Ram Block 2 tops out near Mach 4. The Phalanx carries roughly 1.8 seconds of effective intercept window against a Mach 11 target at maximum range. Both are running. Neither alone was designed for this, but the Bunker Hill has SM-6 rounds in her cells. She has been building a firing solution since 318. The SM-6 is an atmospheric kill vehicle, active radar seeker, tungsten fragmentation warhead, ramjet sustainer providing enough velocity to engage the fastest targets inside the lower atmosphere at ranges beyond 150 nautical miles. It was not designed specifically for Mach 13 glide vehicles. It was designed for the fastest, most agile targets in the atmospheric band. Right now, that means exactly this. At 3 hours, 20 minutes, and 38 seconds, the Bunker Hill fires 3 SM-6 missiles in staggered sequence, 5 seconds between each. Each costs $4.3 million. $12.9 million leaves the ship. In 10 seconds, if the math of this engagement is reshaping your understanding of modern warfare, drop Vinson in the comments right now. The first SM-6 enters the Fattah-1's corridor at 3 hours 21 minutes and 14 seconds at 62,000 feet. The glide vehicle responds with a hard 9G lateral displacement to the right. The SM-6's active seeker updates its solution 40 times per second. It matches the turn. But the glide vehicle's depleted maneuvering budget means post-turn recovery takes 0.6 seconds longer than designed. 0.6 second delay is the first crack in the Fattah-1's survivability. The SM-26 detonates 31 meters from the glide vehicle's forward section. The tungsten pellets tear apart the port guidance fin, already stressed by the earlier SM-3 proximity burst. The Fattah-1 loses all left-side aerodynamic control authority. It can no longer pull left turns. Its trajectory is locked to right-only corrections. The guidance computer adjusts. The projected impact point slides 600 meters northwest of the Vinson's flight deck. Still incoming at Mach 9.6, still dangerous, the second SM-6 already carries the merged track from the Bunker Hill and Dewey radar feed. The Fattah-1 is now predictable in one direction. The SM-6's seeker achieves lock at 7 miles and drives to a direct structural hit at 44,000 feet. The warhead detonates inside the glide vehicle's body. The guidance array and propulsion systems cease functioning within 4 milliseconds. The glide vehicle does not immediately break apart. At Mach 9, a structurally destroyed object still carries massive kinetic energy. It tumbles down range 11 seconds before fragmenting at 18,000 feet and raining debris into open Gulf water, 14 miles northeast of the Vinson. The third SM-6 confirms no intact submunitions in the debris field at 3 hours, 22 minutes, and 7 seconds. The Vinson's Air Defense Coordinator transmits terminal threat neutralized, elapsed time. Fattah-1 launched to final SM-6 detonation, 4 minutes and 59 seconds. In less time than it takes to brew a cup of coffee. The most sophisticated layered naval defense ever fielded absorbed, contested, and destroyed Iran's most advanced hypersonic weapon in a single, continuous, networked engagement. The crew of the Carl Vinson will not receive the classified battle damage assessment for 2 more hours after the engagement ends. When it arrives, it will note the Fattah-1's projected impact point at the moment of the second SM-6 detonation was tracking within 600 meters of the carrier's bow dot at Mach 9. A solid metal penetrator crosses 600 meters in 0.2 seconds. There was no buffer. There was only one missile between 5,100 sailors and whatever Mach 9 does to a ship. There was no margin, no fallback. Only the second SM-6 and 0.2 seconds of physics standing between 5,100 sailors and a kinetic impact on $11 billion of naval aviation infrastructure. Now run the accounting. To Zolfaghar decoys, 2.8 million combined. The SM-2 South that killed them, 3.8 million. The Fattah-1, including 31 months of post-reveal upgrades, approximately 7.2 million. The two SM-3 Block 2A Interceptors, 56 million. The three SM-6 South, 12.9 million. Iran's total investment, roughly $10 million. The United States' total defensive expenditure, $72.7 million. Cost exchange ratio. For every dollar spent in Tehran, Washington spent $7.30. In a Tehran planning room, that number is on a whiteboard. Underneath it sits a following calculation. How many additional Fattah-1 missiles could Iran produce for the cost of the interceptors just fired? The answer is 10.10. Fattah-1 production runs for one defensive engagement. A decade of U.S. procurement, investment consumed in under 5 minutes against a weapon priced comparably to a mid-range regional airliner. But the Vinson is still underway. Bunker Hill rearming from the fleet replenishment. Vessel trailing 22 miles behind. The Strait and the Decoy back on their patrol lanes. At 3:44 a.m., two Fa-18F Super Hornets catapult from the Vinson, carrying 8 GBU-38 Joint Direct Attack munitions. Each targets both Zolfaghar mobile launch sites near the coastal road and the livestock compound above the Fattah-1 Bay. 16 GPS guided bombs at $22,000 each. Total strike cost, $352,000. All three Iranian facilities, including the hardened bay beneath the compound, ceased to exist. At 3:50 a.m., the craters breached the reinforced chamber. Every thermal exhaust signature from the launches is catalogued across 4 intelligence satellites. Iranian state media frames it as an attack on civilian logistics. Overhead imagery shows 3 rocket plumes rising from those same coordinates less than 2 hours before the bombs hit. The Fattah-1 was Iran's most refined weapon. Its altitude band was an engineering decision, not an accident. Its timing relative to the Zolfaghar decoys was coordinated to the second. The 6-minute gap between Zolfaghar launches and Fattah-1 ignition had one purpose: hold the Bunker Hill's combat team on confirmed kills while the primary weapon completed its launch sequence. Every tactical choice reflected 31 months of focused engineering and genuine operational creativity. The altitude band the Fattah-1 exploited was real. The gap between the SM-3's upper engagement efficiency and the SM-6's lower engagement efficiency exists in the physics. It is not a flaw in procurement. It is a consequence of how interceptor geometry works at the boundary between two flight regimes. It failed because the Bunker Hill was not watching alone. It failed because the Decoy's SPY-6, positioned 27 miles in the opposite direction, resolved angular gaps in the Bunker Hills. Track picture from the moment the Fattah-1 went airborne. It failed because the SM-6's active seeker operates autonomously once it locks, meaning an Iranian jamming platform attempting to corrupt SM-6 guidance after 321 was working against a missile that had already stopped listening to its launching ship, and it failed because the second SM-6 had 5 extra seconds of fused 2-ship radar data before going autonomous, 5 seconds of better geometry, 5 seconds that converted a constrained glide vehicle into a solvable intercept. Problem: Iran built a weapon designed to pass through the exact seam between 2 layers of the most advanced naval missile defense on Earth. The seam was genuine, the engineering was extraordinary, and the seam was already being covered by a third hull whose radar operated precisely in the altitude band. The Fattah-1 was designed to exploit 5 seconds. That was the entire margin of tonight's engagement. If Winds of Thought just showed you something about modern naval conflict that mainstream coverage is not explaining, smash the like button right now. Drop Vinson in the comments to confirm you made it through and subscribe now. Because next week, we are breaking down the precise engineering logic behind the Fattah-1's altitude band design, why it was the most structurally dangerous threat to carrier aviation since the Cold War, and what the US is doing about the gap. That analysis drops in 7 days. Do not miss it.